Pibridge, positioning itself as a hybrid DEX and CEX bridge specifically for Pi network, just announced they're launching Pi-collateralized loans ahead of their Q1 2026 open mainnet. The core proposition sounds attractive. Lock your Pi tokens as collateral, receive instant USDT loans, use that capital for trading, staking, or real-world expenses, and never lose your long-term Pi exposure. This targets the exact problem Pi holders face. You believe Pi appreciates long-term, but you need liquidity now. Traditional solution? Sell your Pi, access capital, but forfeit future upside. Pibridge's solution? Keep your Pi locked, borrow against it, and maintain your position. Let's break down the mechanics because, honestly, understanding this prevents catastrophic mistakes. You deposit Pi tokens into Pibridge's smart contract as collateral. Based on your collateral value and the platform's loan-to-value ratio, typically 50 to 70% in DeFi lending, you receive USDT. Example, you deposit 10,000 Pi tokens. If Pi trades at $1 and Pibridge offers 60% loan-to-value, you can borrow up to 6,000 USDT. That borrowed capital is withdrawable, spendable, tradable, fully liquid. Your Pi remains locked until you repay the loan plus interest. You know, Pibridge isn't building this feature in isolation. They've already developed staking pools, peer-to-peer lending infrastructure, yield-based utilities, and cross-chain connectivity tools. The collateralized loan system integrates into this existing ecosystem, creating a comprehensive DeFi stack specifically for Pi holders. This matters because it signals Pibridge isn't a single-feature platform gambling on one product succeeding. They're constructing layered financial infrastructure where users can stake Pi for yield, borrow against holdings for liquidity, and bridge assets across chains, all within one ecosystem. From Pibridge's perspective, this solves capital inefficiency. Pi holders sitting on large bags aren't generating returns if those tokens just sit in wallets. Collateralized loans unlock that dormant capital without forcing sales that would suppress Pi's market price. So, for users, this basically means you get to access funds for all sorts of opportunities, like DeFi yield farming, trading other assets, or even just covering your expenses, while still keeping your Pi exposure if you believe in its long-term appreciation. It's really the same logic as taking out a home equity loan. You don't have to sell your house to tap into its value. Instead, you borrow against it. Hold up real quick. If this explanation of how collateralized loans actually work is clarifying a feature you've been confused about, show some appreciation with that like button. And, if you're serious about understanding DeFi mechanics before risking your capital, subscribe to TJ Crypto World right now. We're teaching financial literacy while everyone else just hypes announcements. Alright, let's talk about the liquidation risk that could destroy you. Credit where it's due. Pibridge publicly acknowledges liquidation risks in their announcement. They specifically mention that Pi's price volatility, especially across multiple exchanges trading IOU versions, creates scenarios where collateral value can drop rapidly, triggering automated liquidation. Here's what that actually means in practice. When you take a collateralized loan, your loan-to-value ratio must stay below the platform's liquidation threshold, usually somewhere between 75 and 85%. If Pi's price drops enough that your LTV goes over this threshold, the protocol will automatically sell your Pi collateral to repay the loan and protect the lender. Let's use numbers. You deposited 10,000 Pi at $1 each, so that's a $10,000 collateral value, and you borrowed 6,000 USDT, which is a 60% LTV. Now if Pi drops to 75 cents, your collateral is only worth $7,500. Your LTV jumps to 80%, 6,000 loan divided by 7,500 collateral. If Pibridge's liquidation threshold is 80%, you're getting liquidated. The protocol sells your Pi, repays the loan, and you lose your entire position. Here's where this gets specifically risky for Pi holders. Pi doesn't trade on major centralized exchanges yet. Different platforms are trading IOU versions at, honestly, wildly different prices. Huobi might price Pi at 85 cents, another exchange at $1.10, and a third at 95 cents. So, which price does Pibridge actually use as the oracle for liquidation triggers? If they're pulling the lowest price from across different exchanges, your collateral could get liquidated even if, the real Pi price on your favorite platform is still holding steady. This kind of oracle manipulation risk is present in all DeFi, but it's really amplified when the underlying asset doesn't have a clear price consensus across market. Pibridge mentions using, quote, automated liquidation systems like larger DeFi lending protocols. What that means is, there are liquidation bots constantly monitoring every single collateralized position, 24/7. the instant your loan-to-value ratio crosses the threshold, liquidation just happens automatically. No human review, no grace period, no second chances at all. During high volatility events, like market crashes, exchange outages, or liquidity crunches, liquidation cascades can happen, where one liquidation triggers a price drop that leads to even more liquidations, kinda like a death spiral. We've actually seen this destroy billions in collateral on Ethereum, Solana, and honestly, every DeFi ecosystem during those major corrections. Pibridge hasn't disclosed interest rates yet, but collateralized loans always charge interest. If you borrow $6,000 at 10% annual interest and hold the loan for 6 months, you owe $6,300 at repayment. If Pi's price hasn't appreciated enough to offset that interest cost, you're paying to maintain a position that's underperforming. If you can't repay because you spent the borrowed USDT or reinvested it into assets that declined, liquidation is your only outcome. Let's be balanced. Collateralized loans aren't inherently bad. They're powerful tools when used correctly. Here are legitimate use cases. So, let's say you need $5,000 for an expense, but you believe Pi could appreciate by 50% over the next year. Instead of selling your Pi and potentially missing out on that upside, you might borrow against it, cover your expense, repay the loan from your income over the next few months, and keep your Pi position intact. It's a way to handle short-term needs without sacrificing your long-term investment. Imagine you spot a DeFi protocol offering a 20% APY on stablecoin deposits. You could borrow USDT against your Pi at just 10% interest, deposit those funds into the high-yield protocol, pocket the 10% spread, and then repay the loan, all while still keeping your exposure to Pi. That's a pretty clever way to make your assets work for you. Suppose you want to buy a dip in another asset, but you really don't want to sell your Pi. Well, you can borrow against your Pi, use those funds to buy the dip, profit from the other asset's recovery, repay the loan, and end up maintaining both positions. It's a strategy that lets you take advantage of market opportunities without giving up your original holdings. So, the first big red flag here is over-leveraging. Borrowing at the maximum loan-to-value, like 70% or higher, leaves absolutely no margin for error. Any price drop, even a small one, can liquidate you immediately. Conservative borrowers, though, usually stick to 30 to 40% LTV, which gives them a massive cushion for volatility. Second red flag is using borrowed funds for high-risk bets. Borrowing USDT to leverage trade altcoins, ape into meme coins, or gamble on outcomes is, honestly, how you end up losing both your borrowed capital and your Pi collateral at the same time. So, here's red flag number 3. Ignoring market conditions. Taking loans during bull market peaks, especially when Pi is overextended, honestly just sets you up for liquidation during those inevitable corrections. The smarter move? Well, smart borrowers actually accumulate loans during bear markets, when collateral is cheap. Pibridge is targeting the first quarter of 2026 for their open mainnet launch. That's still months away. And you know, in that time, Pi's price, exchange listings, regulatory status, and just the overall market conditions are all going to change dramatically. Sure, announcing features now can build a lot of hype, but let's be real, execution risk is still enormous. Will Pi actually have major exchange listings by then? Will those IOU price discrepancies finally resolve? And will the DeFi infrastructure on Pi network mature enough to support all this safely? Honestly, these unknowns make it pretty premature to commit any capital strategies around features that are still, well, basically vaporware. Before we wrap with my positioning recommendations, I need to see that engagement. If this breakdown of liquidation mechanics and strategic use cases is giving you clarity on whether this feature helps or hurts you, hit that like button right now. And for those who want risk management frameworks instead of just hype, subscribe to TJ Crypto World. Alright, here's exactly how I'd approach this if I held Pi. If you're holding Pi long-term and don't need liquidity, ignore this feature entirely. The safest collateral is collateral never posted. You eliminate liquidation risk, interest costs, and smart contract exposure by simply holding your Pi in a secure wallet. Collateralized loans are tools for active capital management, not passive holding strategies. If you're not actively managing positions, deploying capital into yield opportunities, or timing market moves, you don't need this complexity. If you understand DeFi mechanics, monitor markets actively, and can stomach risk, here's the framework. Never exceed 40% LTV. Even if Pibridge allows 70%, your safety margin is the difference between your LTV and the liquidation threshold. Stay conservative. Use borrowed funds for income, not speculation. Deploy USDT into stablecoin yields, liquidity providing, or other income-generating strategies where you can reliably repay loans from cash flow. So, you know, it's really important to monitor collateral health daily. And hey, make sure you set alerts for Pi price levels where your loan-to-value approaches those danger zones. Always be ready to add collateral or repay your loans before any liquidation triggers happen. You should definitely understand the oracle risk. If Pibridge is using Chainlink or any other oracle, take some time to research how it actually aggregates Pi prices across these fragmented markets. Oracle manipulation, honestly, is a real attack vector. Just so you know, I'm watching for Pibridge to disclose some specific parameters, the exact loan-to-value ratios, liquidation thresholds, interest rates, oracle methodology, insurance funds for bad debt, and governance mechanisms. Until those details are public, this remains an interesting announcement without actionable specifics. I'm also watching Pi Network's exchange listing progress. If Pi achieves Binance, Coinbase, or Kraken listings before the first quarter of 2026, price consensus improves and oracle risk decreases. But if it remains fragmented across smaller exchanges, collateralized lending becomes exponentially riskier. Pibridge's collateralized loan feature is exactly what DeFi native Pi holders have been requesting: capital efficiency tools that unlock liquidity without forced selling. But DeFi lending has destroyed billions in collateral across every ecosystem during volatility events. This isn't a guaranteed wealth-building tool, it's a leverage mechanism that amplifies both gains and losses. Treated with respect and conservative parameters, it enables sophisticated strategies. But if it's misused, it liquidates your entire position while you sleep. Alright, crypto fam, that's the complete breakdown. Pibridge's collateralized loan announcement, how the mechanism actually works, liquidation risks that could wipe you out, and strategic frameworks for using this feature safely or, just avoiding it entirely. Massive respect to everyone who made it to the end. You're building financial literacy that separates wealth builders from wealth destroyers in DeFi. Before you go, check out my latest analysis on this topic where I break down some pretty interesting insights. The community's been sharing strategies in the comments that you honestly won't find anywhere else. Drop your thoughts below. Are you excited about Pibridge's loans or maybe a bit concerned about liquidation risks? Would you use this feature, and at what loan-to-value ratio? I read every comment, and your perspectives really do help shape future content. Until next time, this is TJ from TJ Crypto World reminding you, liquidity access is powerful, liquidation risk is deadly. Understanding the difference is what keeps you in the game. Stay sharp, stay conservative, and never confuse leverage with genius.